Because the perversion of sexuality in our culture is not the first domino to fall. It's actually one of the last dominoes that has fallen in our culture. And we're not going to get into that. But the reality is that our culture went down the road of disobeying and dishonoring and ignoring and refusing to give gratitude to God, first in small ways, and then later in bigger ways. And then finally, God has given us over to the place that we're in. Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians 6 that we're to flee from sexual immorality, for every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but sexual immorality, the sexual immoral person sins against his own body. There's a certain kind of insanity tied to sexual sin. Now, all sin is destructive, and there are other sins that are damaging to our body. The sin of gluttony is no less a sin than sexual sin is. And it damages our body, and in some ways it may even damage our body physically more than sexual sin. But sexual sin is the only sin that I'm aware of in the scripture that has this real specific connection. And so this commandment is important because when we are successful by the power of the Spirit and the grace of God, when we're successful at obeying this commandment, it represents a high watermark in our sanctification. But it's also important for us to understand because in a very real sense, it is destructive in a way that other sins simply are not. As I said, Paul teaches again in 1 Thessalonians 4, he says, "For this is the will of God for your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passions of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God." Sexual sin is not only destructive in a particular sense, but in a very real way, it marks the unbeliever in contrast to the believer. There are lots of really kind, generous, nice atheists